Every time I speak to people or different industries with regards to smart city and technology, my head just wants to expand and explode because there's so much out there and there's so much excitement going on in the market. So I feel very privileged to be here today just to chat a little bit about Tatu City, a little bit about our plans, a little bit about the way we're thinking about how smart city can be incorporated in Tatu. So, as I've said, our presentation is a little bit about smart city, it's a little bit about Tatu, it's a little bit about our vision, and hopefully we can share some of our vision and our dreams for what we want to create. A little bit of background, many of you will know about Tatu. I think what's important about Tatu, and the other speakers talked about it, was communities want choice. We want to create destinations and places where people want to live. We want to create cities that integrate across the spectrum. And that's just not hard infrastructure, it's soft infrastructure, it's people elements. So Tatu is a development, a private urban management development of 1,000 hectares. We will look to, at the end of the development, have between 70 to 80,000 residents, approximately 30,000 visitors within the city on a daily basis. And we're looking at live, play, work within an integrated community. And that's what the communities of today are looking at. So how do you create that? How do you create a community that integrates? How do you create a community that talks? If we look at our children, I think they're more connected than we'll ever be. Your average child is connected to their cell phone or their smartphone or their iPad throughout the day, more than even to each other. So what does Tatu offer? We've looked at what's needed within an urban environment, and I think what's important in terms of plans is that as developers, as city and urban node developers, we're looking at the long-term picture. What do people want? How do they want to live? What can we do that moves us from, in some ways, a practical city to a smart city? Because as Lynn was saying, it's a roadmap. It's how do you get there over a period of time, and how do you build and how do you constantly innovate? There is so much scope to do so many, many different things. So Tatu offers a development certainty. We've looked at the planning aspects. We've looked at how we integrate planning. How do we look at land use? How do we make sure that the cityscape evolves in terms of the vision that was laid 2-3 years ago, so that we create a city that looks as we've envisaged it. State-of-the-art infrastructure, we are looking obviously at smart grid for our power, gas, water. We'll be reticulating gas. Those are our plans throughout the city. Sustainability, one of the very, very important pillars. And interestingly enough, smart city is talking more and more about climate change now, because by creating a smart grid and by creating that information, you start to understand the emissions, you start to understand what you're doing within your city and how it's affecting the climate around you. That's very, very important. As I've said, state-of-the-art infrastructure, city management technology. Communities are hungry for information. People want to know what's happening. People want to understand. They want to be able to enter an interface, whether it's online, whether it's on their smartphone, and understand what's happening in real time. Real time, real data. And how do you bring that all together onto a platform? What are the protocols that you look at? And what are the policies? And that's one of the aspects that we are very sensitive and we're looking at, because these new smart cities create a whole lot of data and a whole lot of opportunity to use that data. But how do you use it responsibly within the community environment? And I think that's a very, very big challenge to communities and smart cities nowadays. How do you take information and how do you use it to the betterment of the community without making individuals vulnerable? So excellent location, access. As you know, Tatu is 20 minutes from Nairobi. We are just off the northern and eastern bypass, 3 kilometers from Meru, local community. I've lost my picture, that's interesting. Okay, let me go back. For some reason it's gone. Tatu City Central is our first phase. It will comprise of approximately 6,000 residential units, and those will be high-density residential units. So you've got people living within a space. So how do you energize that space? How do you create a 24-hour city? How do you create a destination? Fine, we've got technology, but how do you use that technology? How do people energize the space? How do we make the place? How do people come out of their apartments down onto that infrastructure? How do they come into the boulevards, into the parks? How do they know what's happening around them? We will have schools, creches. We are putting in place in our first phase is emergency management services. So how do we integrate those services through our central control room? How do individuals feel safe within the environment? How do they connect their CCTV within the public environment as well as the private? And how do we interact and integrate as a community? And those are some of the very big questions that are burning questions for us, and I think for everybody alike. As I've said, the three pillars on which we are building our vision is around sustainability. Climate change, sustainability, resources, how you use those resources, sensors, transmitters in terms of water usage. I believe, and we were having a conversation with regards to water, 40% globally of water is lost through leakage, undetected leakage. Now we have the opportunity in creating a new environment, a brand new virgin environment, putting in infrastructure to ensure that we connect that infrastructure so that we can spatially understand where the pipes run, we can understand the pressures, we can understand what's happening within the infrastructure below ground. So sustainability. We have a wildlife management plan in place. We have a lot of requirements in terms of regulation, in terms of air quality, in terms of water quality. We want to be able to tell our community that we actually recycled X tonnage of waste per month, per week. We want to tell them what's working and what's not working. And how do you bring all of that together? I mean, we could talk for weeks. I don't think a two-day conference is even long enough to debate the different elements and how you bring those together. So to me, it's really, really an exciting platform, and to be able to talk with colleagues and have developers from 3 different cities talking, I think will be so interesting in a year's time and 5 years' time to look back and see what we've done right and the mistakes we've made and what we've learned along the way. Integration, as I've said, we're looking at creating high density, low density. So we're looking at creating communities that live together. And it's different communities from different places that want to live together and interact together. How do we interact with the local council? How do we work together in terms of governance, in terms of enforcement? Not how do we do it, but how do we come together and create something that's very, very unique? And how is it working and how is it not working? Peak hours, peak times, I think the ability and the behavioral change comes from communities being able to understand that during peak hours, their usage becomes so high that you can turn off your geysers, that you can actually turn off some of the appliances you don't want. How do you spread your load throughout the day? How do you control your consumption in terms of what's affordable, in terms of smart metering? The urban environment management, which is obviously very dear to my heart and very close and very important, it's about understanding your infrastructure. So if your infrastructure is constantly breaking down, how do we layer that in a geospatial way to understand what's happening with under the surface? How do you understand what's happening in terms of, for instance, an area that's having numerous breakdowns of infrastructure or numerous exchanges of crime or even bumper bashings? You know, you look at your infrastructure, how is your land use affecting what's happening in the urban environment? And these are all very exciting things that you can do with technology. Traffic transportation, we've spoken to a lot. How do we move throughout the urban node? How do we make access to different routes accessible? How do we control congestion? How do we use systems like Scoot? How do we make it more accessible? How do we access emergency areas when we know? As an individual, you switch on your phone, you get an alert from the city management office that there's problems and congestion at these corners. You switch on your TV, you can actually visually see what's happening in the main streets. So these kind of things just ease the way we live. Land use management we've spoken about, online community. Tatu will have tourism, it will have hotels, it will have institutions, it will have business. How do we make all of that accessible through one portal to the whole community? As I've mentioned, these are just some diagrams around the 3 networks we have, and I'm not going to get technical because I'm not a techie, but when we're looking at the 3 fibers being electrical, city network, and obviously we have a technical problem, and telecommunications. So how do we integrate all of this interfaces into one platform? And I think that's going to be a burning question. How do we keep making it exciting? How do we keep interacting with communities? How do they keep wanting to come back to the portal? How do we tell them what's happening? How do we engage with them? A lot of the learnings and the benefits, and these are maybe a little bit simplistic in terms of the real technology, but it's real data in real time. It's involving citizens so they understand that things that we are doing, the things that work and the things that don't work. It's not just about this is the way it's being done. It's a forum, it's an opportunity. We spoke about creating incubators, opportunities for students to create apps that can be downloaded by the community at Tatu City. There's such an opportunity just to continually innovate, to change behaviours, to teach communities how their behaviours as individuals relate to the way we live within Nairobi, within Kenya, within the world, within climate change. And you know, we can go on and on and on. I don't think there's an end. I think smart city is organic. I think it's going to change constantly. It's going to challenge us all in the room. And I think some of our challenges at the moment is we're looking at partners and tying up in terms of our infrastructure. And what we need to do is how do we create a system that's robust enough that will continually evolve? How do we create the protocols that the community can use and work with? And how do we engage with local communities, local government, local institutions and associations? So how do we create that integrated, that truly integrated city? So I think it's going to be a very exciting pathway, very exciting roadmap. And I look forward to be able to talk again and again and to share some of the learnings and to share some of the things that we do, the mistakes we make, and maybe also with my colleagues as to how we grow and how we learn in this very, very new environment. So, thank you.